Hey, and welcome. This is the Ben Shapiro Show. Oh, we are going to go into such detail on that horrific Democratic debate last night. You're going to love every second of it. If you missed a single solitary moment, we'll recap it all for you. I know. Does that sound like excitement for you? I mean, my God, you haven't been this excited since your divorce, have you? But get ready, man, because it's going to be an hour of joy and fun just for you. So we begin with the basic overall viewpoint of the field. Nothing changed. Nothing changed. 3 hours, nothing changed. All you lost was 3 hours of your life. You're 3 hours older, 3 hours closer to death. Good news, Joe Biden's probably closer than you are, but you're 3 hours closer to death. And nothing happened. The reason nothing happened is because there is a disconnect in terms of the interests here. What I mean is that there are three candidates who are obviously ahead of the field. Now, what's funny is that when you look at the actual polling numbers, if you just watch the media, Elizabeth Warren's the front runner, right? If you look at the betting odds, Elizabeth Warren is the front runner. And then when you look at the actual numbers, what you find is not only that Elizabeth Warren is not the front runner, but that Elizabeth Warren may not even be in second place. There's a Reuters Ipsos poll from yesterday showing Joe Biden at 22, Sanders at 16, and Warren at 11. Okay, there's a Hill-Harris poll showing her at 12. The CNN poll has her basically even with Bernie Sanders, but there's a Politico Morning Consult poll this week that showed her at 16 compared to 21 for Sanders and 33 for Biden. In fact, in the Real Clear Politics poll average, she's running about half a point behind Sanders right now. So she's actually in third, according to the RCP average. But according to all the wizards who know, she's emerging from the field like a magical Indian Native American princess. It's just incredible. It's incredible. Like Pocahontas from the mists, about to forge around that river bend. Elizabeth Warren emerges from the plains of Oklahoma. In any case, there's one problem, which is that Elizabeth Warren is utterly uninspiring. Not only is she utterly uninspiring, if you're a Joe Biden fan, you say that she's a phony. And if you're a Bernie Sanders fan, you say she's a phony too. You know why? Because she's a phony. That's the sad thing about Elizabeth. So her whole shtick is, I used to teach at Harvard Law, and now I am like, I'm like Bernie Sanders, but not as crazy, and I'm like Joe Biden, but more progressive, man. And here's how it comes out. It comes out as a boring HOA member who's lecturing you about how you left the wrong welcome mat outside your door last night. Here's Elizabeth Warren's opening pitch.
The paths to America's middle class have gotten a lot smaller and a lot narrower. Today, service members are preyed upon by predatory lenders. Students are crushed by debt, and families cannot afford childcare. I know what's broken. I know how to fix it, and I'm going to lead the fight to get it done.
Now, let's say that you're a Bernie supporter, and you hear that. You're like, okay, so here's this lady who comes along with all her plans. Why are her plans cribbed from Bernie's notes? Really, like all of her plans look exactly like Bernie's, except maybe a little bit less. Maybe a little bit less in particular areas. And if you're going to go full crazy progressive, why not just go with the octogenarian socialist loon bag who was so lazy he once got thrown off a commune? Why not that guy? I mean, seriously, he took on Hillary Clinton. He got jobbed in the last election cycle. Why not finally give Bernie Sanders what he deserves, a lifetime pension from the federal government, which is all he's been seeking all along? Endless pudding. Here's Bernie Sanders making his pitch. And you tell me which is more inspiring if you're a member of the left.
We have got to recognize that this country is moving into an oligarchic form of society where a handful of billionaires control the economic and political life of this country. And as president, I am prepared to take them on.
I mean, who would you go for? Elizabeth Warren, who's kind of, blasé, a little bit boring, or Bernie Sanders, this crazy old dude shouting at the moon? And I mean, a man who hates the rich so much that he almost explicitly calls for us to eat the rich, and then they get stuck in his throat, and he sounds like that during a debate. Like, which one are you going to choose? Which one's more exciting? And if you're a Joe Biden fan, and all you're looking for is a little bit of solidity, all you're looking for is just an end to this. Okay, because that is Joe Biden's appeal, right? Joe Biden's appeal is based on two things. One, you're comfortable with Joe Biden. And you're comfortable with him because he's kind of like a guy who blows with the wind. He's not too radical on any of his policies, supposedly. He doesn't seem supremely competent. Hell, he's asleep half the time. You're just in the middle of a conversation with him, and he's just dozing off in the middle of the conversation. And Joe Biden is not threatening to you. He has an assistant who chews his banana for him in the morning. Joe Biden is the face on the Metamucil bottle. Like, he's not the guy who's threatening to anybody. And so if you're thinking back to normalcy, You're thinking, okay, well, here's an old guy. Sure. Non-threatening old guy. Not like Bernie, who looks like he's off his meds and wandering through the streets of Los Angeles shouting about the end of the world. But, like an old guy who goes to Denny's and orders the early bird special and then goes home and watches Matlock. So that's pitch number one for Biden. Pitch number two, he stapled himself to Barack Obama's pant leg for 8 years, and they kind of like Obama, so sure, why the hell not? And that's a fairly solid pitch. Are you really going to turn to Elizabeth Warren from that? Because Elizabeth Warren is so inspiring? Here was Joe Biden's pitch last night.
Look, this is the United States of America. There's never been a single solitary time when we've set our mind to something we've been unable to do it. We're walking around with our heads down like, woe is me. We're the best equipped nation in the world to take this on. It's no longer time to postpone. We should get moving.
Okay, so he's a fairly energetic old guy. I mean, sure, every so often his teeth fall out. A thing that actually happened in the middle of the debate last night. David Muir was asking him a question, and suddenly Joe Biden starts looking like Jim Carrey in The Mask. His front teeth start falling out of his face. It was not a great look for him. And we can actually show you the visual if you're subscribing over at Daily Wire. The audio doesn't matter, but you can actually see him start to chomp around, and the chompers start to come right on out. There they go, right out of the face. Just the Polydent did not do the job, right out of the face. But at the same time, are you threatened by him? Are you really going to turn to Elizabeth Warren for all of this? So here's the problem for each of the candidates. If you're Joe Biden, you're leading. You are. Okay, in all the polls, you are leading in every single primary by the poll average. Now, it may not be by a huge amount, right? If you look at New Hampshire, he's leading by he's basically dead even with Bernie Sanders in New Hampshire. Elizabeth Warren isn't leading there. In Iowa, he's leading by something like 10 points. Nationally, he's leading by 10 points. In Nevada, he's leading by 6. In South Carolina, he's leading by 25. Nonetheless, the betting odds have Warren up 11, which is bizarre. In any case, if you're Joe Biden, you're thinking to yourself, okay, the worst thing I can do here is go after Elizabeth Warren, because if I go after Elizabeth Warren goes after me, and maybe Bernie runs up the left side. And if I go after Bernie Sanders, then Elizabeth Warren just slides right through the middle. And if you're Elizabeth Warren, you're thinking, well, do I really want to get in a fight with Biden? I mean, he's an old dude. He's probably going to fall over anyway. I mean, literally almost physically fall over. Well, I'll just kick the cane out from under him subtly, and down he goes. Do I really want to be that person? Because then I look kind of mean and cruel, and after all, he was really close with Obama. What if I just let Bernie go after him, and then I just kind of sit over here and let them clock each other? And if you're Bernie, you're like, well, I don't really want to attack Elizabeth Warren. I don't want to attack Elizabeth Warren, because if I do, I look mean and cruel, and people say I am a sexist. And then she probably skyrockets, and she wins. And if I attack Joe Biden, then she wins. So you basically have the end of the good, the bad, and the ugly, with everybody with their guns pointed at each other, and no shots are getting fired. Now, as we get closer to the primaries, if it emerges that Biden is actually continuing to be durable, you will start to see some violence break out between Bernie and Warren, because it has to. This is Highlander. There can be only one. But with that said, last night was effectively a holding pattern for all of the top candidates. Biden didn't blow it. The media are trying to play it like he blew it. Oh, well, old Joe was old. Yeah, we know he's old. Baked into the cake. We know he's old. We know he says crazy stuff. We know that every so often, Joe Biden is just going to start rambling about the olden days. And he literally did that. I mean, in the middle of the debate, he literally started rambling about the olden days. He started talking about why black children need record players, which is weird on two fronts. I don't know why they would be using record players. And two, I don't know why they would need record players. But listen, vinyl is back in. The hipsters have it. So here's Joe Biden making the hipster case for bringing back record players.
We bring social workers into homes of parents to help them deal with how to raise their children. It's not that they don't want to help. They don't know quite what to do. Play the radio. Make sure the television, make sure you have the record player on at night, the phone. Make sure the kids hear words. A kid coming from a very poor school, or a very poor background, will hear 4 million words fewer spoken by the time they get there.
Well, we should just have played them this debate, and then they'd hear 4 million words spoken and no content added. That would have been the solution to that particular problem. We'll get to more of this in just 1 second. First, there is a basic truth out there. A lot of people want the information from your online accounts. Every time you go online, you are risking your information. There are hackers who want your information. There are governments who want your information. Big tech wants your information so they can monetize it. Shouldn't you be in control of your own data? I know that I care about this sort of stuff because I've been hacked before, and it is no fun having to cancel your credit card and then redo all your automatic bills and all the rest of it. Instead, I started using ExpressVPN. I recommend using ExpressVPN every time you go online. I know the founders of ExpressVPN, really good folks, Big tech companies can use your IP address to match your internet activity to your identity or location. When I use ExpressVPN, search engines and media sites can't see my IP address at all. My identity is masked and anonymized. ExpressVPN has the added benefit of encrypting 100% of your data to keep you safe from people who you don't want to have your data. ExpressVPN software takes just a minute to set up on your computer or phone. You tap one button and you're now protected. So, if you're like me and you believe that your internet data belongs to you and not to those giant tech companies who aren't friendly to conservatives, ExpressVPN is indeed the answer. Protect your online activity today with the VPN I trust to keep my data safe. Visit expressvpn.com/Ben to claim an exclusive offer for my fans. That is expressvpn.com/Ben for 3 months free with the 1-year package. Visit expressvpn.com/Ben to get started. So, as I say, yeah, Biden's going to be old, but that's baked into the cake. More importantly, Joe Biden stapled himself to Barack Obama's pant leg. And that does make a difference because right now, what you have to understand is that Biden is already losing among white voters. In the Democratic primaries, Biden is down to both Warren and Sanders, I believe, among white voters. Among black voters, he is wiping them out. So, do you think black voters are looking at Elizabeth Warren and going, yeah, that old white lady, seems like I should move my vote over there? Or should I go with the guy who's like Barack Obama's bestie and like they did travel comedy together? And it's like John Candy and Steve Martin in Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, except with politicians. Do I want that, or do I want Elizabeth Warren? Or do I want the whitest person outside of Elizabeth Warren, Bernie Sanders? That vote is not moving over to either Warren or Sanders so far. And barring some sort of cataclysmic implosion by Biden, I don't see his numbers beginning to drop much further than they've dropped. I don't think that you see Biden starting to enter the teens. I think he stays well above 20%, maybe closer to 30% as this primary progresses, which means that eventually Biden and Warren and Sanders are all going to have to go to war with one another. Now, it nearly came to that last night. It nearly came to that last night a little bit. So Joe Biden, for example, actually did go after Elizabeth Warren. And this is what was astonishing to me about the debate, more than anything else. Not Biden, not Sanders. They are what you thought they were. I thought Elizabeth Warren was going to be good at this. I had been informed by reliable sources that she was deeply charismatic and knew how to answer questions. And as it turns out, she's actually quite good at not answering questions, which doesn't really wash because Biden, for all of his nonsense, is more honest about his policy than she is. And Sanders is certainly more honest about his policy than she is. Like if you ask Bernie Sanders straight up, you going to raise taxes on the middle class? Bernie will be like, of course. The middle class will have to pay more. That's how it works. We will tax the rich. We will tax the middle class. The only people who will benefit are the poor. I mean, come on, the proletariat. Those are the people like Bernie is honest. Elizabeth Warren, she's still trying to fib her way through this thing. So you end up with awkward answers like this from Elizabeth Warren. She was asked about whether middle class taxes would go up with her health care plan. The answer, of course, is yes. And she just refuses to answer the question. She's like Hillary with slightly more smoothness to her.
Will middle class taxes go up? Will private insurance be eliminated?
Look, what families have to deal with is cost, total cost. That's what they have to deal with. And understand, families are paying for their health care today. Families pay every time an insurance company says, sorry, you can't see that specialist.
Okay, well, that is not an answer to the question. That's not an answer to the question. And Biden made that clear, right? Biden actually went after her and clocked her a pretty solid body shot with regard to her health care plan. He says, you're not paying for any of this, lady. And they keep talking about how you're the planner. You're the person who knows what she's doing. Yeah, not so much.
The fact of the matter is, we're in a situation where, if you notice, he hadn't answered the question. This is about candor, honesty, big ideas. Well, let's have a big idea. The tax of 2% that the senator's talking about, that raises about $3 billion. Guess what? That leaves you about $28 billion short. The senator said before it's going to cost you in your pay. There will be a deductible in your paycheck. The middle class person, someone making 60 grand with 3 kids, they're going to end up paying $5,000 more. They're going to end up paying 4% more on their income tax. That's a reality. Now, it's not a bad idea if you like it. I don't like it.
Well, I don't like it, and it's a bad idea. I think most Americans agree with this, which is why Elizabeth Warren has been fibbing about it. Kamala Harris has been fibbing about it, too. Well, as we continue here on the Ben Shapiro Show, we will continue to talk about this Democratic debate. We'll bring you the highlights and the lowlights. It's mostly lowlights. Spoiler alert. Also, the creepiest moment in a presidential debate that I have seen yet. And believe me, it didn't actually come from Beto. It came from Kamala Harris. This is the Ben Shapiro Show. Welcome back. This is the Ben Shapiro Show. So we're going through this Democratic debate. It was not great for the Democrats. It wasn't great for any of the front runners. All of them had their foibles. All of them had their stumbles. The fact is that Bernie Sanders, he keeps getting exposed because his ideas are very, very terrible. But it doesn't matter because we all know that his ideas are terrible. So he's like, well, whatever, man. Just deal with it. Just deal with the fact that my ideas suck, right? So this was one of my favorite exchanges. There was one point in which Joe Biden went after Bernie for having too much faith in corporations, and it was pretty amusing.
Let us be clear, Joe. In the United States of America, we are spending twice as much per capita on health care as the Canadians or any other major country on earth.
It's America.
Well, that's a good reminder because neither of them actually know where they are at the moment when this takes place. Bernie Sanders also suggested that his Medicare for All plan is the most cost-effective approach in America, which, of course, is not even close to true. But it doesn't matter if what he says is true because he's just going to say socialist nonsense, obviously. And then there were moments where people tried to go after Joe Biden. Honestly, I thought that for all the talk about how Joe Biden was super old, every candidate who tries to attack Biden's age is failing. Eric Swalwell tried this in the first debate. Long lamented Eric Swalwell. You know, he came out and he said, "Isn't it time to pass the torch?" And Biden was like, "No, I use that torch to light my way to the bathroom at 2 a.m. So that was the thing that, and Eric Swalwell is no longer with us. Well, Julian Castro tried it last night. He tried to suggest that Biden didn't remember what he'd said 2 minutes before. There's only one problem, which is that he's wrong. Biden was actually pretty consistent in what he said.
The difference between what I support and what you support, Vice President Biden, is that you require them to opt in, and I would not require them to opt in. They would automatically be enrolled. They wouldn't have to buy in. That's a big difference because Barack Obama's vision was not to leave 10 million people uncovered. He wanted every single person in this country covered. My plan would do that. Your plan would not.
They do not have to buy in. They do not have to buy in.
You just said that. You just said that 2 minutes ago. You just said 2 minutes ago that they would have to buy in. I'm fulfilling the legacy of Barack Obama, and you're not.
I'll be surprised to him.
I mean, again, they tried to go after Biden. That is going to fail. Julian Castro is going to find himself off the stage pretty quickly because he's obnoxious and everybody sort of gets that he is obnoxious. Well, I talked about the worst moments of the debate last night. Beto O'Rourke was responsible for nearly all of them. I mean, Beto was truly, epically awful last night. Awful, awful, awful. Not only did he suggest that he was going to come and take every single person in the United States, he was going to come after their guns, right? He actually said this out loud. He said, sure, you say that we can't come after the guns. I say we can. Here was Beto.
Hell yes, we're going to take your AR-15, your AK-47. We're not going to allow it to be used against our fellow Americans anymore.
Okay, that is a thing that is not true. It's not even close to true. It's also pretty tyrannical. In the question that Democrats should be asking themselves when they are suggesting that they will forcibly remove guns from hundreds of millions of Americans is how many police officers and law enforcement agents are you willing to put in harm's way in order to take away guns from law-abiding people? Is that a great idea or a bad idea? But that wasn't even Beto's worst line of the night. His worst line of the night is where he explained that America's the worst place that ever was, so elect him president. America's deeply racist against black people, so elect this super white human being to be president of the United States. That's Beto's case.
Racism in America is endemic. It is foundational. We can mark the creation of this country not at the 4th of July, 1776, but August 20th, 1619, when the first kidnapped African was brought to this country against his will and in bondage and as a slave, built the greatness and the success and the wealth that neither he nor his descendants would ever be able to fully participate in and enjoy. I'm going to follow Sheila Jackson Lee's lead and sign into law a reparations bill that will allow us to address this at its foundations. But we will also call out the fact that we have a white supremacist in the White House, and he poses a mortal threat to people of color all across this country.
A mortal threat to people of color. Not just the president says bad stuff that I find to be racially insensitive, or the president's a racist. No, he poses a mortal threat. Donald Trump is roving the streets of America, seeking to strangle all the people of color all over the United States. He's a white supremacist. He's not. And also, he poses a mortal threat to people of color. Also, America is evil and was founded on slavery. Also, elect me, the whitest person ever, who inherited a crapload of wealth from my father and married super wealthy, elect me president to fight white privilege. Solid case there, Beto. Really, really good stuff. But that wasn't the worst moment of the debate. You know, it's funny. There are a bunch of people who are reviewing this debate saying Kamala Harris did a good job. She did not. She did not do a good job, like, at all. In fact, Kamala Harris scares the living daylights out of me. I can talk about Elizabeth Warren being scary, but the truth is this. I don't know how Elizabeth Warren would govern because Elizabeth Warren was smart enough to ditch her principles to try and win the nomination. I figure she'd be smart enough to ditch her principles to get something done. Now, the person who's truly scary in this race is Kamala Harris. There's this one moment in this debate that I will play for you coming up in which Kamala Harris unleashed her inner James Bond villain. And it is creepy as all hell. Play it for you coming up. This is The Ben Shapiro Show. Welcome back. This is the Ben Shapiro Show. So we're going through some of the highlights and the lowlights of that Democratic debate. Look, bottom line is nobody really won. Okay, so everybody sort of lost in the sense that nothing changes. So here are the quick debate grades for you. Joe Biden, B-. Bernie, a B, because Bernie's always a B. Right? He is exactly what he is. Elizabeth Warren, a C. And that is because I expected her to break out, and she really didn't. A lot of people today are like, oh, she was so great. She was so wonderful. No, basically, she didn't collapse in on herself like a dying star. But she also didn't do anything of note. And basically, she stood there, and everybody left her alone. And that was enough for her to remain a formidable candidate, I suppose, but she's running in third, according to the Real Clear Politics poll average, and she's running in third in Iowa, and she's running in third in New Hampshire, and I'm just not seeing it. Not seeing it, gang. Okay, Pete Buttigieg, D, just terrible last night. Terrible. Amy Klobuchar, I thought, was a B+ because she actually talked about there being a middle of the country, which apparently Democrats forgot about. Julian Castro was brutal. I mean, just awful in every way. But he was responsible for the one highlight of the evening. And this one highlight of the evening from Julian Castro came at the expense of the insufferable Pete Buttigieg. Buttigieg has just become insufferable and awful. He spends his days talking about how everybody misunderstands the Bible and is a bad Christian except for him, and how Mike Pence scares him, and all this sort of stuff. It's all very weird and off-putting. Well, there's a moment yesterday when Buttigieg tried to play the "why can't we all be friends" card. I hate this crap. It's a debate. In a debate, the goal is to clarify viewpoints. So everybody's arguing about healthcare, and Buttigieg jumps in to try and grab onto the, this is what the American people hate, us talking and debating. And Julian Castro, who's a jerk, at least he's a consistent jerk. He's like, shut up, Pete. Sit down, Pete. Shut it. It's pretty great.
This reminds everybody of what they cannot stand about Washington. Scoring points against each other, poking at each other, and telling each other that you're my plan, your plan. Look, we all
that's
have
called a
different
Democratic
visions
primary
for what is
election.
better about
That's
our-
called an election.
And good for Julian Castro. That was like his only good moment of the night. His other moment involved him trying to tackle an 80-year-old man. But that moment was pretty great. Okay, so that was my highlight of the night because all points to Castro there. It is so irritating when politicians are on stage in the middle of the debate. They're like, why do we all have to debate? The American people want to see solutions, not problems. Good for Julian Castro. Hey, now for some lowlights. So I already played you Beto's lowlights, right? I already played you Beto calling America racist and saying he's going to take all the guns. But the person who had the worst lowlights, honestly, was Kamala Harris. So Kamala Harris is just awful. She's awful. She wrote a couple of jokes beforehand, and this is her thing. She's extraordinarily scripted, which is why there's this meme that's around of her walking out of a building, and she looks over, and there's a bus with her name on it, and she's like, yeah, a bus, woo! And it was the 8th take, and that she had walked out 7 times before that and was not sufficiently enthusiastic. Well, last night, she dropped a couple of supposed laugh lines. There was only one problem. Only one person laughed, and her name was Kamala Harris. So one thing she did was she picked on Donald Trump's supposed size, right? She said, Donald Trump, it's just like the Wizard of Oz. And I don't know who she's workshopping these lines with, but she really needs to take a night at the Comedy Cellar and work these things out. Here she was.
Donald Trump in office on trade policy, he reminds me of that guy in the Wizard of Oz, when you pull back the curtain, it's a really small dude.
Oh, and then she sort of loses it and laughs. And yeah, it wasn't great. Wasn't great. But that was not her creepiest and weirdest moment. Her weirdest moment came when she was discussing gun control. So David Muir is talking to Joe Biden, and he says, you've said in the past that you can't just by executive action ban assault weapons, which is true. We have a constitutional system. And Joe Biden points this out. And then Kamala Harris jumps in and goes full Bond villain. It's wild.
You can't do it by executive order any more than Trump can do things when he says he can do it by executive order. Does the vice president have a point there?
Some things you can. Many things you can't.
Let's let the senator answer.
Well, I would just say, hey, Joe, instead of saying no, we can't, let's say yes, we can.
Let's be constitutional. We got a constitution.
And yes, we can.
And Joe Biden's like, we have this thing called the Constitution. She's like, ah! And the crowd is like tepidly laughing along, like, is she going to kill us? They're slowly backing out of the room. She starts laughing before she even gets to her punchline. Jake, I would just say, he's like, there's a thing called the Constitution. She's like, well, I say we don't need a Constitution. And this is when the camera slowly pulls back out of the room, out of the building, over the building, out of the earth, right? Like it's a James Bondville. It's pretty spectacular. I mean, that lady is frightening. She is frightening. I also loved it when Kamala Harris, I don't know what game she thinks she's playing. I loved it when Kamala Harris opened this debate. So she decided she was going to break that fourth wall. There's something in theater called breaking the fourth wall, where theater relies on you sort of being, as a member of the audience, a fly on the wall of the lives of the people who are on the stage. Right? So there are 3 walls on the stage. Breaking the fourth wall, which is you looking at the stage, is when the people on stage turn to you and then say things directly to you, the audience. Well, Kamala Harris decided to do that randomly at the beginning of the debate. She did this whole, I'm speaking to you, Donald Trump, on this TV. And it wasn't great.
The only reason you've not been indicted is because there was a memo in the Department of Justice that says the sitting president cannot be charged with a crime. But here's what you don't get. What you don't get is that the American people are so much better than this.
Okay, sure. My favorite is when she says, I know you're watching this, Donald Trump. I know. He wasn't watching that. He was doing a rally in Baltimore where he was making fun of how light bulbs make him look orange. And that wasn't a thing that was happening. So there's some of the lowlights. I will say another highlight was Andrew Yang just like throwing money at people. And basically acting out that bizarre TV advertising pitchman from RoboCop. So Andrew Yang just shows up on your debate screen. He's like, you know what? Let's just skip the middleman right here. You know, we keep talking about redistribution. We keep talking about big plans and all this. My boy Andrew Yang, he's like, you know what? We don't need any of this. Here's some money. Just take it and shut up. Here's some money.
My campaign will now give a freedom dividend of $1,000 a month for an entire year to 10 American families. Someone watching this at home right now.
Okay, and the people who judge was like, well, that's a creative plan. It's better than yours, dude. Like, really, your plan is to stand there and be obnoxious. Yang also dropped my second favorite line of the night, and that was when Andrew Yang randomly announced that he was Asian, which is a pitch, I guess. My boy Andrew Yang being like, I'm Asian? You know what that means? I know doctors. All right? Sure.
Now, I am Asian, so I know a lot of doctors. And they tell me that they spend a lot of time on paperwork, avoiding being sued, and navigating the insurance bureaucracy.
So all the things that he said after that were true, but I kind of got caught up in the part where he was like, I'm Asian, so I know doctors. Which is like, I'm Jewish, so I know accountants. And Okay, so my boy Andrew Yang showing up for some of that. One of the other characters that some of the commentators were very hot on was Cory Booker, who did not bring his angry eyes last night. Now, Cory Booker without his angry eyes is just not Cory Booker. You know, Mr. Potato Head, with the angry eyes. Instead, Cory Booker showed up and he talked about unity, and then he decided that he was going to explain that black people across America are in jail because racism, not because individuals commit crimes for which they are then prosecuted and go to jail after conviction.
We have systemic racism that is eroding our nation from healthcare to the criminal justice system. And it's nice to go all the way back to slavery, but dear God, we have a criminal justice system that is so racially biased. We have more African Americans under criminal supervision today than all the slaves in 1850.
Okay, I do not know how you are comparing slaves in 1850 to people who committed crimes and are in jail now. Like, if you dealt drugs to a child and now you're in prison, but you happen to be black, how are you in any way similar to a person stolen from their home, transported several thousand miles to a plantation where you are forced to work at point of bayonet, whipped, raped maybe, separated from your family? Like, I'm missing the connection there. How nobody finds that offensive is beyond me. And comparing convicted criminals to people who are enslaved is it's a take from Cory Booker. Okay, we have a little bit more of this in just 1 second. First, let's talk about the importance of preserving your memory. So probably out in your garage right now, you have a bunch of stuff. And you just think of it as a bunch of stuff. But a lot of that stuff is the first stuff you would grab if there were, God forbid, some sort of natural disaster or if your home were endangered. Because a lot of that stuff is like old photo albums or old reels of film from your parents. Well, maybe what you should be doing is grabbing all that stuff and putting it in a much more convenient format where you can actually look at it. That's where Legacy Box comes in. This makes a great, great gift for mom and dad particularly. I've done this for my parents. You should go to Legacy Box. So here's how it works. You take all this stuff, you dump it in a box from Legacy Box. They will label all of these things for you, make sure that they are all safe. And then they digitize all of this and they put it on a thumb drive or on a DVD. So now you got access to it all the time. Over 450,000 families have trusted Legacy Box. They have easy to follow instructions, safety barcodes included for every single item. You're preserving your family memories from being degraded or being lost forever. All the work is done by hand right here in the United States. I know the founders. It's a great company. There's never been a better time to digitally preserve your memories. Visit legacybox.com today to get started. Plus, for a limited time, they are offering my listeners an exclusive discount. Go to legacybox.com/Shapiro to get that 40% off your first order. Again, legacybox.com/Shapiro. Save 40% today. Get started preserving your past with Legacy Box. Okay, so here's the thing. When all is said and done, nothing in this debate actually helped the Democrats. There's not a single word that was said in this debate that helped the Democrats. Healthcare devolved quickly into, we are going to remove all of your private healthcare plans and make you pay exorbitant taxes for it. Climate change turned it into Elizabeth Warren pledging to remove your car and upcharge you for electricity in order to zero out climate emissions. Bernie Sanders ended up trying to disassociate himself from Venezuelan socialism, which is always a great look. And on education, the Democrats had no answers except to suggest that we dump more money into it and then yell about de facto segregation. Is any of that attractive to the American people? Like, Donald Trump is sitting off to the side going, you know, listen to those guys. Like, don't listen to me. Go listen to those guys. Trump did a rally last night, and at that rally, he correctly pointed out that all of the traditions and beliefs that made America what America is, they're under attack just across the hall on this other TV channel. Go check it out.
We've done things that I don't think any administration has even come close in the first 2.5 years. We have done things that very, very few have even thought about doing. But we also need to prepare for the coming fight, because the traditions and beliefs that have made the American dream possible are under attack like never before.
He's 100% right, of course. 100% right. And most people know this, which is why most people are still like, oh, how about Joe Biden? Right? How about like a dead person? Let's just do that. Let's just try like an actual non-animate human being for a little while. Let's make that happen. Even the Democrats after last night were trying to buy back some of the stuff that got said. Cory Booker went on CNN and he was trying to suggest, you know, all these Republicans talking about us seizing your guns, they're fear-mongering. This is Cory Booker.
I hate when Democrats use the language that Republicans try to use to scare people away, as opposed to just the sort of the pragmatism and practicality of this. You have to set up a system. Yeah, that is mandatory. You have to set up a system to pull them off. But this idea, this imagery that the fearmongers and demagogues try to say of somehow armed police officers showing up and confiscating weapons, that's the fear-mongering.
Okay, over to you, Beto O'Rourke. What have you to say about this whole gun confiscation thing? Oh, exactly the opposite of Cory Booker, huh?
So just to underline it, it will be voluntary. It won't be, hell yes, we'll come get your guns.
No, it's not voluntary. I want to make sure that we make the distinction here. It is mandatory. It will be the law. You will be required to comply with the law. So, I mean, as with many of our laws, we don't go door to door searching people's homes to see if they are in fact breaking the law. But we expect people to comply with the law.
Okay, then how do you expect to enforce the law? Like, really, if it's a mandatory gun buyback, how do you expect to mandate this? I mean, presumably you will have to go through sales slips and then go after people. So, yeah, the Democrats are running from their own agenda because their own agenda stinks, which is why last night a bunch of the candidates just kept talking about Trump because they got nothing. There was one word, by the way, that was never mentioned the entire time, and that was economy. It was mentioned only in passing. And there was not a single question asked in that entire debate about the economy. Why? Because the economy's good, and Democrats have to pretend it doesn't exist. If that continues to be the case, that debate shows they've got problems. They have a lot of weak candidates up there on that stage. Well, in just a few minutes, we're going to do our Friday relaxing segment. Of course, I'm talking about Uncle Ben's SJW Storytime. Got to go through a children's book for proper messaging. But first, I remind you that you ought to go and subscribe over at dailywire.com. Why? Well, then you get all 3 hours of this show, The Ben Shapiro Show, commercial-free on demand, which is pretty awesome. You also get all the behind-the-scenes stuff. You get access to our Sunday specials. If you spend $99 and get an annual subscription, you get our Leftist Tears hot or cold tumbler, which has just been refilling itself consistently over the course of the day since the Democrats realized they have a bunch of bad candidates. Go check us out over at dailywire.com. We really do appreciate it. Well, coming up, it's time for Uncle Ben's SJW Storytime. We're going to take a classic children's book and break it down to ensure that your children are only being taught the wokest messages because America, must be made better through force of wokeness. This is The Ben Shapiro Show. Welcome back. This is The Ben Shapiro Show. It's a Friday, and I know we all need to relax a little bit going into the weekend, and that means it's time for us to do what we do every week, where we take a children's book and we analyze it for the proper woke messaging. We ensure that you social justice warrior parents out there, you get exactly the kind of books that your children need and indoctrinate them into the ways of leftism. So we vet old books, we examine new books. That means it's time for today's Uncle Ben's SJW story time. Today's book is a supposed classic of the genre. Is it classic or is it just cruel and brutal? That is The Little Red Hen. The Little Red Hen, a classic little golden book. Okay, well, we own a lot of little golden books in my house. I will say that gold is preferred to silver, and that in and of itself is deeply troubling. One summer day, the Little Red Hen found a grain of wheat. A grain of wheat, said the Little Red Hen to herself, I will plant it, raping Mother Earth for agricultural purposes. Already this is going wrong. How dare the Little Red Hen plant this seed? Doesn't she know that Mother Earth must be left to her own devices? And if that means starvation, then that means starvation. Look at that factory farming going on over here. She asked the duck, will you help me plant this grain of wheat? No, not I, said the duck. Because the duck was woke. The duck is an environmentalist, right? She asked the goose, will you help me plant this grain of wheat? Not I, said the goose. And here's how you know this book is terrible, because the Little Red Hen is dressed like a farmer, but the duck is dressed like sort of a paper general. And the goose is dressed like a goofball wearing like a pot on his head. It's just so derogatory toward people who don't wish to partake in the rape of Mother Earth. She asked the cat, will you help me plant this grain of wheat? Not I, said the cat. And the cat is portrayed as a lazy bum. This is racism against cats, speciesism. Sitting there fishing. She asked the pig, will you help me plant this grain of wheat? Not I, said the pig. The pig is obviously this is speciesist, sitting there playing the fiddle, eating watermelon. It's terrible, terrible pig. Then I will plant it myself, said the little red hen. And she did. Soon the wheat grew tall, and the little red hen knew it was time to reap it. Because the little red hen, again, is exploiting Mother Earth for her own nefarious needs. Who will help me reap the wheat, she asked. See, this is the little red hen, not even wanting to compensate the people helping her. Just, who will help me? Jerk. Not I, said the duck. Not I, said the goose. Not I, said the cat. Not I, said the pig. Then I will reap it myself, said the little red hen. And she did. She reaped the wheat. It was ready to be taken to the mill and made into flour, processed into the kind of gluten-rich food that upsets the stomach of every good SJW child. This isn't even gluten-free right here. Taking wheat and making it into bread? And what about all the people who suffer from celiac disease? Did they ever think of that? Who will help me carry the wheat to the mill, she asked. Not I, said the duck. Not I, said the goose. Not I, said the cat. Not I, said the pig. Then I will carry it myself, said the little red hen. And she did. She carried the wheat to the mill, and the miller made it into flour. That evil miller. When she got home, she asked, who will help me make the flour into dough? Not I, said the duck. Not I, said the goose. Not I, said the cat. Not I, said the pig. Then I will make the dough myself, said the little red hen, and she did. First of all, the book overall is just inherently sexist because the little red hen is not a little red chicken. Right? The little red hen is a hen. So why is it the hen's job to cook? Sticking that hen barefoot and pregnant in the kitchen? Soon the bread was ready to go into the oven. Who will help me bake the bread? Said the little red hen. Not I, said the duck. Not I, said the goose. Not I, said the cat. Not I, said the pig. And they're all partying it up and living the life. And this book is blaming them. It's like the book is basically treating all of these animals like welfare queens. And as we will see, that is the message of the book. Then I will bake it myself, said the little red hen, and she did. After the loaf had been taken from the oven, it was set on the windowsill to cool. And now, said the little red hen, who will help me eat the bread? I will, said the duck. I will, said the goose. I will, said the cat. I will, said the pig. No, said the little red hen, I will eat it myself. And she did. Okay, so that last thing right there, like, what a cynical, abusive move by the little red hen. She asks them, she mocks them. Do you want to eat this bread? 1% are little red hen. Like, nope, sorry. I made this bread. I earned this bread. And when I planted the seed, I reaped it. I had it ground up, made in flour. I baked the thing. You want to eat this bread? No, no. This is when Elizabeth Warren burst through the door shouting, we need a wealth tax on the little red hen. We need 2% of that oven. That is inherent wealth that the little red hen had. Like, is there any evidence that any of the other characters in this book had a house, knew the miller, had the oven? Wasn't there an inherent privilege in being the little red hen? This evil, horrible little red hen who makes bread and then won't share the bread? Bernie Sanders burst in through that door. From each according to his ability, from each according to his need. AOC bursting through. She's like, unable or unwilling to work. Well, you know what? This is a Republican book right here. And at the very end, there's the little red hen, all fat and happy, reading a book, going to sleep, taking off her reading glasses, really enjoying herself. What about those other animals in the field starving? What about them? Has anyone ever thought of those other animals? See, the thing is, work is brutal and terrible and awful and evil. And if you would participate in it, you are participating not only to the rape of Mother Earth, you're participating in the inherent inequality of a system that is rooted in privilege and oppression. The true story of the world of the little red hen is rooted in racism. The story of the little red hen did not begin in 1776. The story of the little red hen began in systematic oppression of various species by those who are privileged to live on a farm, who can lay their own eggs, who have ovens. Little red hen should acknowledge her privilege and then just share that bread with all those other animals who are lazy bums. Because, come on, wouldn't that be a better world? So never buy your child the little red hen. Never read your child the little red hen. Your child is owed bread by everyone else who works for the bread. This book that says that if you don't work, you shouldn't eat, you know, that old New Testament principle, terrible, terrible book. Make sure that you instead go get your kid Rainbow Fish. We'll have to do that one next week. Rainbow Fish. It's a good commie book. We'll get to that one next week. In the meantime, have yourself a wonderful, wonderful weekend. Relax. Enjoy the fact that none of the Democratic candidates on that stage is president. I mean, thank God for the moment. We'll get to more of it next week. I'm Ben Shapiro. You're listening to The Ben Shapiro Show.